And we are live. Welcome, welcome, welcome to tonight's Nurse SHIFT Change Influencer Roundtable. Here we are. So good evening, everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight. We are Nurses SHIFT Change, right? So Nurses SHIFT Change, for those of you who are tuning in for the first time, Nurses SHIFT Change is a nurse-led movement guided in humanities, ethics, social justice, and science. And at its core, this movement exists to reclaim the soul of our profession and really to remind us and remind nurses that our voices matter, not just at the bedside, but in our communities, our systems, and our policies. And tonight's conversation is centered on a topic many nurses live every day, but don't always say out loud. And it's the fear of speaking out, right? And fear of professional consequences, fear of being labeled, fear of standing alone. Yet history has shown us that silence really protects us. It really protects our patients, and it doesn't protect our profession. So we're having this discussion in the context of very real and painful current events, including the recent death of the ICU nurse, Alex Preddy, which has raised urgent questions about ethics, right? Humanity, and the responsibility nurses carry beyond our clinical roles. So this is not about politics, it's about values. It's about what it means to be a nurse in this moment. And tonight you'll hear from nurse leaders who are influencing change in different ways, through legal reform, through professional association leadership, through nurse-led media, in education. So you'll hear how influence doesn't require a massive platform, but it requires courage, it requires clarity, and it requires action. So this will be very conversational and honest discussion guided by our HESS pillars. And we'll close by sharing why collective action, including gathering together at our Nurses SHIFT Change Report for Duty rally in May, why it matters now more than ever. So without further ado, I'd like to let our panelists introduce themselves. And before I do that, I do have to introduce our gracious co-moderator host, Rosa Hart. Thank you for being here, Rosa.
Thank you.
Along with myself, I am one of the founding members, Dr. Lindra, of Nurses SHIFT Change, and tonight is being co-moderated by myself and the gracious Rosa Hart. So you will definitely hear from Rosa as she'll moderate and guide our discussion tonight. But I want to start off by allowing each panelist to introduce themselves and just introduce yourself, and please, along with introducing yourself, please share what is one way you are currently influencing nursing or advancing change in your work. And Justin, I will start with you.
Yeah, I think, and thank you all. I'm honored to be with all of you today. I think that when we look at how we can influence things at the bedside, for me, I practice clinically. I work currently as a nurse practitioner in an urgent care clinic full time, and also serve as president of the Washington State Nurses Association. And I think a lot of people look at issues at the bedside or even in clinical areas as exclusive, right, from policy discussions. But especially nowadays, I think that the relationship between both of those are extremely, extremely connected. There are days when I will go to work over the past few weeks that I'm seeing more uninsured patients. I'm seeing folks that are afraid of coming out of the shadows to seek care because of their immigration status. I am seeing fewer access to resources. All of that has a direct connection to policy at a higher level. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to recognize that in order for us to provide better care at the bedside, we have to at least be aware and also stand up for issues that affect the care that we provide or the patients that we care for. So for me, it's that direct connection and how we can actually build that connection for nurses. as when I started out in nursing, I was, always kind of politically inclined. I enjoyed political science, but I also enjoy the ability to care and connect with patients and members of my community. And I think that nursing is actually uniquely one of those professions where you have the ability to connect with people. You have the ability to utilize the trust that the public gives you in order to affect change that could be extremely powerful. So I'm delighted to see that there are other nurses that are engaged and wanting to make a difference. Now more than ever, we need all hands on deck to be able to shift the narrative and be able to stand up for our patients and our communities.
Thank you for that, Justin. Maggie, Advocates for Nurses. So for you, I'd like you to go ahead and introduce yourself, and for you, introducing yourself and the influence that you are having on nursing and shaping the change in your own lane. That includes your work around legal reform with the Kansas Board of Nursing. Do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and talk a little bit about that?
Sure, and I'm super honored to be here as well amongst, a lot of brilliant nurses. So Maggie Ortiz, I've been a nurse for 25 years, spent the majority of my time at the bedside. I no longer work at the bedside. I now am a legal nurse. As a prior investigator for a board of nursing, I have concerns about the lack of due process that I think that we're all seeing now played out in Kansas. And this isn't just me alone. This is many other nurses, and like you led with, that were able to speak up or did speak up, and they went to their representatives because, like Justin touched on, when nurses, people are like, it's not political, but it is. The rules and regulations, those got adopted by the law, right? Our scope of practice, was adopted by the law, right? These are all things that are put into place. And, talking about what's happening in Kansas, and it's every state in the United States, in my experience, I don't really know a state that's not fully affording what I feel like, in my experience, is due process when a nurse is under investigation. And what does that mean? Because that's a big loaded word. So let's just say that you gave the wrong medication and it was 2 years ago. Wouldn't you want to see the medical record? Do you not feel like it's your right to see the medical record? Because I do. That's what I fight for every day, for your right to have to see that medical record so that you can form a robust response to whatever's being alleged against you. So I have spoken up. I have left my lane. And then majority of the people here know that I do speak up every day for your right as it pertains to defend yourself under administrative law. So that does take courage. But when we talk about courage and clarity, when you know the rules and regulations that dictate your professional license, just around staffing, for example. And I'm trying not to get too long-winded, but I'm also trying to tie this to things that you can know and understand. You use the Nurse Practice Act, I would say, back to the unsafe staffing, 217.11.1 S and T. T is you making that assignment, S is me accepting that assignment. But do you see, when you know the rules and regulations that are put into law that dictate our professional license, it helps for you to advocate for yourself. So what's happening in Kansas is the Oversight Committee has brought them in, and they're talking about some of this conduct. It's played out in 2 hours. I wrote a LinkedIn article. There are links to the hearings. They are kind of lengthy, but I do think it's time that every nurse does tune in and watch what's happening, because if you don't think that cannot be you're sadly mistaken.
Thank you, Maggie. So we are going to hear from Nurse Alice Benjamin. So thank you so much for joining us. Definitely want you to go ahead and introduce yourself. And you are relaunching a nurse-led media and education, healthcare news and education network. Can you introduce yourself and talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So Alice Benjamin, family nurse practitioner. I work in the emergency room and family health. About 26 years in nursing, but critical care, emergency medicine has been my jam. And my mantra is I like to talk to people before they become my patients. So in that role, I have done a lot of work with American Heart Association, agencies like AARP doing consumer health, and that that type of work has landed me medical contributor for NBC Los Angeles, and I've had a longstanding career in media going back as to 2010 on mainstream media national programming. So I've had all this background in media and a lot of education, and while still active at the bedside, still active with my professional nursing organizations. I'm on the California BRN's Nursing Education and Workforce Action Committee, ANA California Board of Trustee, their foundation. And so I'm in this unique space where I'm practicing, I have my professional nursing organizations, and I know what I'm trying to educate the public. And so in this kind of perfect storm, if you will, I've seen lots of missed opportunities where nurses can lead conversations, not just being talked about, like, oh, we're in a strike. Oh, a nurse did this. A nurse was victimized, or a nurse, those type of things. Instead of just being the subject, how we can lead the conversation and be the experts around education, healthcare policy, and all of these things. And a lot of that has actually led to the work that I'm doing now, which is launching any day now. I'm so excited about it, is the Nurse Approved Network. It is a nurse-led healthcare news and education network where we'll be offering original reporting, expert-driven healthcare coverage, comparable to the scope of a major broadcast network, while also simultaneously offering CEs, accredited CEs for that, so people can get the latest news, trending topics, new research, all of those things while being able to get CEs. But the beauty of it is that it's nurse-led, and a majority of our writers and journalists are nurses. And so I'm really excited about doing that, the editorial piece, and as well as having an original slate of content from podcasts, talk shows, scripted and non-scripted series where nurses are the writers, creators, and I don't want to say actors because we are nurses, but playing this out on video. So I'm really excited to have the nurses really show Hollywood or the news or the public, our policymakers, how stories should be told, and from the different lenses, and from the most trusted healthcare professional who, quite honestly, has probably the best perspective from the patient. So that's one of the many things that I'm working on. I'm really excited about it.
Amazing. All of you are just simply so inspiring, all of the work that you're doing. So without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Rosa so that we can get into our discussion questions. Rosa, it's on you.
Thank you, Dr. Lindra. I appreciate you. So for our questions tonight, we kind of want to give each one of you a chance to answer. The first question is about the fear that we have around using our voice. So many nurses experience fear when they're trying to decide whether to speak out on an issue, and it might feel urgent to them, but it's controversial. What has held you back at times, and what steps or experiences helped you find the courage to use your voice? And let's start with Justin, since you went and introduced yourself first.
Yeah, I think that's the big question that we're all facing right now, right? And I'll be honest, in my own opinion, I think we've been facing it for a very long time. I think for us, we have to really go back to why it is that we got into the work that we do. What is our professional code? What are our values? What do we believe in? And I always like to kind of compare it to like what the care that we're going to give at the bedside, right? When there is an issue that comes up, nurses, from an advocate perspective, are the ones to speak up, are the ones to catch the errors, are the ones to ask questions to protect their patients. I think we need to reframe that in the way that we look at how we advocate for our broader communities and the communities that our patients live in the political arena. We have to be able to say, these are our values, these are things that we stand by, and be able to follow up on that and explain it to people that may see it as controversial. I've kind of come to the understanding that what we say, yes, nursing is political. that does not necessarily mean that we are tied to a partisan ideology or political party. Parties change over time, ideas and ideologies change over time, but our values should remain strong, steady, and we should be committed to them. There are tough times that will come through. In my leadership with WSNA, there are positions that are taken that upset members, upset nurses, and I think in any association you'll see that, where there are people that disagree or create some angst over what is perceived as controversial. But I think it's incumbent on all of us to be able to explain to our colleagues, look, this is the reason why, based off of our code of ethics, this is directly connected to the care that you give in many ways, and be able to articulate that to our colleagues. So for me, at least, it's been remaining true to our values, not being afraid to speak with people that disagree or may not fully understand the rationale behind certain decisions that are made, or before, certain statements or positions. But I think we need to start having conversations about, what do we truly believe in as nurses? What do we care about as nurses? Because our jobs are not just when we clock in and clock out. Our jobs are affected by what goes on in our society around us. And we need to keep pushing that point to be able to bring our colleagues along.
Well, amen. Gotta agree with that. So let's go to Maggie next, and I'll restate the question for you while you're coming off mute. What has held you back at times, and what steps or experiences help you find the courage to use your voice, Maggie?
Well, I think that think about the first time that you coded a patient, or I think that innately, and again, not to get too far away from anything political, but who wasn't fearful of that? I've taught ACLS, I've taught BLS. Everyone is fearful, right? But it's with knowledge and confidence that we get over that. That's when you're with your tribe, you understand things. And swinging this back to, again, nurse shift change and things, and I'm gonna reiterate some things that were said. It's not bipartisan. People would be shocked at some of the committees that I sit on. It would surprise you, because I don't pick a side of the aisle, right? And it's not political. And just like Justin said, when you clock into your job, everything around us is dictated by some kind of governing agency, HHS, Joint Commission. Think about any four-letter entity is going to be walking into that building. Tell me that that's not somehow tied to some rule regulation that is politically driven, and it doesn't have to be. It's not bipartisan. So how have I gotten over that fear? It's been through knowledge. And I know that not everyone is cut the same way that I am. I talk to nurses every day, all day, that more often than not are involved in some type of litigation or under investigation, and they're not always able to speak up or to help defend themselves, quote unquote, but it's through knowledge. And I teach them that through things like I have Advocate Academy, which is a program that I developed for nurses that are under investigation. When they understand and that through that knowledge, it helps to empower them, to give them that confidence to overcome that fear, right? And I'm going to have to lean into my girl, Brene Brown. I think we all know her and love her, right? She talks about some of these things, and tapping into vulnerability. So for me, I have found that the more that I know and understand, through understanding the rules and regulations that dictate my professional license, I promise you, when I start slinging those things around, people are like, wait, hold on, we're good, Maggie, we're good. I'm not going to give you that unsafe assignment, or I'm not going to, because it's been through the knowledge of learning the rules and regulations that have helped me personally to overcome some of that fear.
Thank you, Maggie. So Alice, let's see if you have something else to say. Well, we want to hear about your personal experience if we can.
Yeah.
So was there a time that you felt like something was holding you back, and how did you find the courage to overcome that and use your voice?
Yeah, if I can start off by saying that collectively, nurses, we have been socialized to basically kind of keep our heads down and just do the work. Although we are here to take care of patients, protect life, it's almost as if we're just supposed to do the work and not have opinions outside. And now with the advent of social media, podcasts, and people now having the ability to create their own microphone, it gives us an opportunity to speak out more about topics that we feel are important, to advocate for, make people aware of certain injustices, what their rights are, those type of things. And it's all, for the most part, done well intended. Sometimes I know that in my observations that I wish some of us did a little more research before we use our microphone to say things. But it's not to mute you, it's just so that you're well-rounded in the topic, because sometimes we know that we don't have all the information. Stories can look a certain way. But I will say this, whether you're let me back. My story is I was advocating for heart health, and I was working at a very prominent hospital. And mind you, I'm talking about being heart healthy, exercise, dieting, all the things that we want our patients to do and that we do in patient education. And I was still let go from my organization because I was told that we take care of celebrities. Our nurses are not celebrities, realizing that's not what I was doing. I was advocating. I was doing my community service using a different platform. So that for me at that time, that was the biggest fear of getting fired from what I thought was my dream job. But now in today's climate, like for example, even most recently, the Florida labor and delivery nurse, I think she's being referred to as the Boca Raton nurse. She's faced severe backlash and lost her job. And now I believe we're trying to revoke her license for comments she made on TikTok about the White House press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, regarding her pregnancy. So it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. Now, I'm not saying to speak ill or bad about someone, but just raising awareness about certain things. It's almost, I believe, like for some hospital or healthcare leadership, we're going against the grain. We're just supposed to work and take care of patients. You're not really supposed to have an opinion or push the agenda or speak. And that's why nurses have vastly been underrepresented in the media. That is why we've not been provided the proper tools for how to advocate. Classes are coming along now, but you did speech 101, communications, but now recently in our leadership classes, we're helping nurses to utilize their voice, use it in a meaningful way. But also, let's be realistic. There's definitely some tiptoeing. Unfortunately, that has to happen if you don't want to lose your job. We want to do the right thing, but we don't want to lose our livelihood. So it's really can sometimes it's almost like a tactic to keep us silent. But we have to recognize that fear, and we have to collectively as nurses in a profession work around that, because while I'm clocked in and out of the job, I'm not clocked in and out of my profession. So on the clock, off the clock, people are going to look at me as a nurse. So a lot of what we do, even on our community service time outside of work, still gets blended over into the things that we do at work. So it's really kind of muddy out there right now. And I can see how people are fearful of speaking up, because usually it's that one or two persons that speak up and we're liking, we're commenting, we're resharing, but we don't want to be the ones to do it. So I feel like we still have a lot of work to do, and we need to support our colleagues, especially with important messages, like being in the staff meeting where the manager says something and one person complains, and then it kind of gives permission for everyone else to speak up about how they feel. We have to create that type of climate where we're more supportive of one another. But it's scary. I lost my job. This nurse is about to lose her license, and it's not right. And disclaimer, I don't know the full statements of what she said. I don't know if she said anything that was, if she was just merely stating an opinion, or if she was saying some other things that could have led to that. But we shouldn't be afraid to talk. We shouldn't be afraid to use our voice. And so it's a really sad place where we are, but I think the important part is that we identify it and we collectively come together like, okay, guys, we got to move this needle, because right now we're getting dragged. Nurses we're getting dragged, and we shouldn't do that. We should be leading important conversations, leading the charge, standing up and speaking out, advocating for ourselves, for our patients, for humanity, and protecting public health and safety, which I believe a lot of nurses on social media are doing. And it's the kind of the powers that be that don't like us ruffling the feathers.
Thank you, Alice. Appreciate that.
May I just chime in just for a second, just to pivot off of Alice? I did hear the grossly offensive things that this young lady said, and I know that none of us are condoning anything that was said, but I'm going to go back to due process. I just hope that this nurse is afforded due process, because I do believe that they are leaning towards the revocation of the license, which, like Alice said, that's livelihood changing, right? That ends you up on the Office of Inspector General list. And so I think it's important that we all pause. I think it is grossly offensive what this young lady said, and I am not condoning anything that she said. She does say that she wishes her, and I'm not a labor and delivery nurse, some kind of tear from stern to sternum, and that she doesn't have a bowel movement the same. I'm not directly quoting, but as a nurse, right, and identifying yourself as a nurse, because if you use the word nurse, then you just tied yourself to the board of nursing. It's different if you say I have a master's degree in nursing. I own that. What I don't own is a registered nurse or a licensed nurse. The board owns that. And now when you say that, you just tie yourself to the rules, regulations, best practice, ethics. So just pivoting again, I think we need to be using social media very responsibly. There is no education, I do feel like, because on one hand, they tell the nurses and the doctors are texting the nurses on their personal phones, but yet there's no education and training in there to a certain degree to tell them not to use the phone to a certain degree. And again, some of it should be common sense, but I do think that there needs to be a lot more robust education and responsibility about having a phone and using social media.
Thank you, Maggie. And as a matter of fact, the ANA is working on creating that education, and I'm part of it. So it's happening. Moving on to our next question, which is another thing I like to work on. I'm the chair of the Ethics and Human Rights Committee for the Kentucky Nurses Association. And our next question is about putting our ethics in nursing into action. So, in light of recent events like the death of Alex Preddy, an ICU nurse who was killed while engaging in a highly charged public situation, how do you see nursing ethics and professional responsibility guiding our role as advocates beyond the bedside? And let's go back to Justin.
Well, I see it, that's a great question because it's very relevant to what's going on right now. When it comes to our code of ethics, that really should be our North Star of what it is that we do as nurses and what we stand for as a profession. There's a lot in the code of ethics that, I think it's separating out, like, we apply things in abstract, but then when rubber hits the road, like, are we going to actually apply it when it's actually happening? And that requires courage, it requires clarity, it requires an understanding of why the code of ethics is the code of ethics and why those specific phrases and guidances are put into the code of ethics. And I think that it's because, like, for example, we ought to speak up when there are violations of human rights. Why is that? Because if we live in a society that is not safe, when we live in a society that does not foster, say, access to care, does not foster human rights, the right for people to protest, the right for people to express themselves, then that has downstream effects on our ability to care for our communities and for patients to feel safe and in the communities that they live in. And so everything that I think we put out, especially if it is something that, say, may be perceived as controversial, I think it is important to be able to cite the code of ethics for the reasoning behind some of those statements that we put out, the reasoning behind for why we take a position on a particular issue, because it should stem back to the code. I think we're at an inflection point within our profession, and I think it was specifically within social media that, it was mentioned earlier, responsible social media. When people say that they are a nurse and then they're putting out information or putting out a perspective that really is not grounded in the code, that does really lasting damage to our ability to be able to affect change in the public arena. And I think that when we make arguments and there are disagreements, which oftentimes can be healthy, we need to be basing those arguments based on our code of ethics, because that guides our ability to make decisions about how we care for patients, what our perspective should be on patient care, and what kind of connects us as a profession, right? So I think that, ingraining the code of ethics in any public action that we take, it not just adds legitimacy, but it makes our actions much more unified, and it makes our actions much more justified when we take them.
Well, I'll say amen to that. And then let's go on back to Alice. How do you see nursing ethics and professional responsibility guiding our role as advocates beyond the bedside, Alice?
Well, sometimes I have to also kind of just remind myself, because we say nursing ethics, but just refamiliarize myself, like, what does that really mean? So those are like the moral principles, the guiding values of our conduct, our decision-making, relationships with patients, emphasizing compassion, patient advocacy, and respect and dignity, built on the tenets of autonomy, justice, beneficence, all that, do no harm, all of those things, right? So that's what I need to do. Those are nursing ethics. I'm reminded of that. And those are the things that I want to do. Those are the things I set out to do. I don't think there's anyone that sets out to say, I'm not going to follow nursing ethics today. I'm just going to go against the grain. I don't think anyone does that. And when we're at work, I think those things are extremely obvious. It's when we've clocked out of work and we're in our home environments, our home settings, that our responsibility and the professional responsibility extends into our personal lives. And I think that's where sometimes things can get murky, because to us, we are going to be doing that. Like Alex Preddy, he was there protecting a woman on the scene, right? And in doing that, he got harmed, right? He was, and so, but that's what we do. Nurses, we take care of other people. We do those things. But so in one aspect, in the hospital setting, and when it's kind of traditional patient care, we're expected to do that. We're supported to do that. But when outside of those hospital walls, those hospital clinics, where's the support or resources or that same energy? Where's that same energy? And oftentimes we can feel like we're left out on a limb on our own. But ethically, we are obligated to advocate for conditions that protect life. It means speaking up for failed systems. It means documenting patterns of harm, refusing and speaking up against situations that normalize danger as part of the job, right? But sometimes we're penalized, or we're not given the support to do that. So it can really create, I don't know what the word is, but this distress inside, because we want to do the right things, but we're living in fear. And I think a lot of people are living in fear these days from what we're seeing on the news, how things are being handled, how there's lack of support, how people are getting fired, getting their license, put in jeopardy. And so when it comes to nursing ethics, I definitely believe that we do, it's part of who we are. This is why we've been voted the most ethical profession for 23 years now. We do have that professional responsibility. And again, I'm gonna use the word murky, but where I think it gets murky is when we're outside of, we're clocked out. What does that look like in settings that aren't supported by our hospitals, where, quite frankly, some people could say, like, well, that's not your job, you're off the clock. Like, that's none of your business. Well, but we kind of treat everyone like, remember, everyone's your patient, not just who you're assigned to, everyone's your patient. So we carry that same mentality out into the world, but we're not always supported in doing that.
That's so right. We don't just turn it off. If they say, is there a doctor or a nurse on the plane? If a doctor don't stand up.
I'm standing up before the doctor. I don't care.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, like, ethically, don't you feel compelled to help? I mean, we went into this because we want to help, right? Not because anybody's making us. So I really appreciate your perspective. And then, Maggie, do you have anything you want to add about the ethical side of our professional responsibility going beyond the bedside?
I mean, I would just have to pivot off Alice. I agree. We've all taken community health. I mean, we have to ask our community. I think it's just like who we are and what we do. I don't think that we turn it on and off. We come out, we assess the situation, we act in good faith, and Alex Preddy, I mean, again, I think that he went there in good faith to protest his constitutional right, and he was murdered. It's again, going back to reiterating due process, full investigations. These are all things that, should be afforded. And I think codes of ethics, rules, regulations, they are all part of who we are. And when we, like Alice said, clock out, I do not think that those things just leave us.
Right.
True story. Can't turn it off. And then our third question is about influence and action. Whether you have a national platform or a small local circle, what does influence look like in practice? What are concrete ways nurses can turn knowledge, networks, and professional authority into action in their communities or at the policy level? Justin, you want to start us off?
Sure. That's I think a good question for all of us again, as far as looking at what our responsibility is during really tumultuous times, and when we do have people that look to us during really, I would say, tough situations. I mean, the situation we're living with right now, particularly over this past week, has just been it's been hitting all of us very, very hard, right? And one thing that I like to think about is, back when WSNA was faced with a decision to, join a lawsuit against the federal government for the deletion of databases related to vulnerable populations, LGBTQIA plus populations, for example, the HIV risk reduction tool. That decision really to move forward with that, there was a lot of self-reflection about what does this mean as far as retaliation goes? What does this mean for as far as what am I going to be personally attacked by if this ends up becoming a major issue? And ultimately what it came back to is, if I'm afraid of the consequence, then the times that we're living in are untenable. If I'm afraid of the consequences of speaking out, if I'm afraid of the consequences of saying or speaking truth to power, then we really don't live in a free society, and we're enabling the destruction of our ability to speak up for what is right. And those types of decisions are tough for all of us. It's incumbent on all of us as nurses, as leaders, which every nurse is a leader if they're willing to utilize that code of ethics and stand by it, no matter what. Those types of decisions have to come with what are my goals, what are my values, what do I need to acknowledge as the possible risks, and what's the decision that has to be made here that's difficult, that requires significant thought, but why am I doing it? And ultimately that lawsuit was successful as far as a settlement and restoring those databases. I think the most rewarding thing for me was the HIV risk reduction tool was something I used in my clinical practice. And the fact that when I would type in hivrisk.cdc.gov, that website was gone just by an executive order. That was really that motivated me to speak up on that and utilize that as an example of how policy meets practice. And now when you go to that website is back online. It has a banner on it that's fairly, I disagree with what the banner says on the top of the website, but it's because of action. It's because of the ability to step forward and, like was mentioned earlier, know that your job extends beyond clocking in and out. That I can now go to that website, and I can, when patients, I can utilize that website with patients that I see. I can show them their risk of their HIV risk, and that's something that came from direct action outside of the clinical arena. But I think if we work in coalition, if you're working in coalition with other nurses, if you're working in coalition with other healthcare groups to act, it's a lot more difficult to be able to have retribution against one person because you're working in coalition with others. I myself have worked with other state associations to speak up on issues, to form coalition around things related to vaccines. And again, when you're working with groups of other people, your voice becomes much more powerful. I know that this is about influencers, but the goal of influencing is to empower other people to see the potential success of the strategy that you take, so that they can then influence others to build a coalition and build a movement. And that's why I think with Nurses SHIFT Change, I think there's a lot of potential to have power here, and see actual results from the advocacy that we take.
Justin, that is a lot to be proud of. And like, I greatly commend you. I told you this when we were on the podcast already, not just buttering you up, but all three of you are here, Alice, Maggie, Justin, because you were selected as highly effective influencers who are affecting positive change. You each have your own realms, like Alice is primarily doing this education and media. And then Justin, you're using some media, but you're making some effective policy changes through coalition building, which is huge. And I think a great model that we all should learn from. We can build coalitions in our neighborhoods. We can build coalitions in our cities to implement things that will make our communities healthier. So I think it's important that they hear about this behind the scenes thought process that you each have. And then Maggie, you're out here teaching nurses how to not go to jail, which is thank you. Also keep your license, but yes, also stay out of jail. And you're teaching so many people on your social media platforms, and it's affecting so many people. And you might not know them. They might be watching one of your millions of followers on TikTok, but you're teaching so much and really deeply influencing people. You're not just getting somebody to buy some supplements. So I want to just take this moment to commend you all that when we call you influencers, you are, and you're what influencers need to be. So I do want to give Alice and Maggie, let's go to Maggie next, a chance to answer this question as well. What are some concrete ways? What are some concrete ways that nurses can turn their knowledge, networks, and professional authority into action in their communities or at the policy level?
So I'm going to read it, with Justin as well. It is community and collaboration. This Kansas thing gave me some hope. I was walking alone for a long time. I was being shamed and told that nothing was happening. Nothing to see here, folks. Played out in this courtroom, right? So then now I feel like I'm in community, right, with other people who do have concerns like I do. So I think that that's really, really important. And not everyone is going to be able to speak up like me or Justin or Alice. And I just implore people, use what works for you. You got 3 kids, you got 2 jobs, right? Maybe you're just texting your representative, or maybe it's you're supporting one of us to do what we need to do. You're giving us $1, whatever it is, meeting you where you can right now, right? So I tell people that it does take a tribe, like Justin said. You just have to find where you fit. Find where you fit. I mean, any single one of us, you reach out to any one of us nurse influencers. I know I'm just meeting Justin, but I'm going to speak for him. But I know Rosa and I know Alice. If you reach out to one of them and you need some whatever, they will create community for you. And if you need something, every one of us here knows a nurse, and it's always a who. I will get you connected with the who that you need to be where you need to be. I promise you. So get in community.
That's so true. And we've got some great comments here. Michelle is saying implementation of policies to protect nurses and nurse practitioners is crucial. And her passion is policy that requires getting mental health resources in place and actually requiring them to get routine care. So, I mean, advocacy, coalition building, it can look so different. Like we have so many different specialties for every different body part and then some, right? And let alone like all the community needs. So Alice, what about you? What would you recommend nurses do to get involved?
Well, I'll start with saying that influence doesn't require a massive platform. It just requires intentionality, and that nurses at any level, whether you're new grad, experienced nurse, retired nurse, whatever the case may be, I think it all starts with, I like to make it easy and less scary, is just conversations, just having conversations. And then when we can take those conversations and amplify that voice using media, becomes advocacy. That advocacy then has the opportunity to shape healthcare policy and practice and gets the message out to the masses, hence the words mass communication. We say media, but it's really mass communications, getting information out to the masses. And so I've been in several nursing work groups, organizations, and nurses, we work well among nurses, and we're all saying the same thing. It's where I think there's opportunity for nursing is to, when we get outside of the nursing bucket, we are playing in our own sandbox, not always optimizing the full playground. we need to work with other organizations, and maybe they're not nurses. And this is, for example, I do a lot of advocacy and community work with American Heart Association, AARP. They're not necessarily healthcare organizations in the form of direct care, but they have initiatives that are aligned along the matters of health. And they understand that in order to get good health, you have to have good nurses and good doctors. And so there's some alignment that can happen. And so their introduction to what the nursing profession is maybe their own personal experience, or how we as nurses introduce ourselves to them. We don't need to wait till we're invited to something to participate, because we'll see something happen like, why did the nurses get invited? Well, we needed to invite ourselves. We should have. We should have. Yeah, we should have. We need to be better, can improve. There's opportunities, I should say, for us to survey the landscape. Where are there opportunities where nurses can reach out, align with, and collaborate with other organizations? Because here's the thing, nurses, we need support. Well, other organizations need support too. But who really wants to just, it's almost like, well, we want support, but we're not really there to support anyone else. That's not how it works. That's just not how it works. And I think there's some strategy that needs to happen. We want to be genuine and authentic with the work and things we're aligning with, but we got to help others just like we want their help when it's time, right? So I think there's an opportunity for us to influence by creating alliances with even non-nursing organizations. And, that could start with educating school boards, faith groups, local leaders about the healthcare realities. At the policy level, it can look as simple as responding to calls for public comment. We see that a lot, but I don't know how many nurses actually leave a public comment to actually weigh in. We talk about it, but are we doing the action? We need to take action here. Supporting legislations, getting out there and voting. We talk a lot, but we're not always out there voting, right? We have to do the action. We have to do the thing that's going to move the needle instead of just talking about it, and stop being the complainers in the staff meeting that have so much to say and then just aren't moving. And I'm only saying that because I've seen it. And I probably at once upon a time, I was like that. And so, but I recognize that if nothing changes, nothing changes. And so to influence, it just requires a conversation. And that's why I would like, and then again, when you get many people having these conversations, that soft whisper can turn into a loud roar. And I think that's where nursing, we've seen a lot, a lot's going on. We don't like it. We are the largest segment of the healthcare workforce. What do you mean that we can't apply pressure on these politicians? What do you mean we can't, I don't understand it by sheer numbers, but maybe it's because we're not all out there voting. We're not out there putting public comment. We're not all so we just need to do that. And it just starts with your simple conversation, your comment on a post, your comment to, those type of things. So I just say you can influence it, but don't feel it has to be very grand right away. Everyone starts from somewhere. You got to crawl before you walk.
Well said, Alice. That was so beautiful.
Thank you.
You all know I can't get enough of you, but I think Lindra has a closing statement for us.
I'm on mute. I actually do just have one question for each of you as we close out tonight. And the question is the burning question of why out of all of the great responses that you guys gave tonight. And I just want you to echo and piggyback off of it and share, why should those who are watching, and for those who are not watching, why should they attend the Report for Duty rally in May, hosted and organized by Nurses SHIFT Change? And Justin, I'll start with you.
Quickly, I'll say it's what helps us get through this time. I think that, so, just this past week when I was at work, or, I've been interacting with other people, I think our society has gotten to the point where we don't like to talk about things that are uncomfortable. I've heard from a lot of colleagues, I'm just so put down by everything that's going on, and I just don't know what to do. I feel, whereas with me, when I have something like this group to advocate with, when I have a rally to go and speak up at, I'm not feeling down. I'm feeling motivated. These types of activities, the Report for Duty rally, it's your way to challenge to channel your frustration, to channel your angst, your disapproval with the situation that we have in healthcare, regardless of who, is at fault for putting this, in the situation that we're at. This is your ability to act. This is your ability to speak up and join with your colleagues in saying, this is what we stand for, and this is what we need to act on. And I'll end it with a story where here in Washington State, I have a motivating factor, and that is where I actually had a patient that was in Washington State. We had Medicaid that was available for undocumented. It was a state-funded program, not federally funded, for a certain number of undocumented immigrants in the state of Washington. And I remember actually advocating for a patient to sign up for that insurance because this patient was not wanting to access the system, had a serious infection, would not refuse to go to the emergency department, and I helped them sign up for that insurance. Fast forward 2 years later, that patient's information has now been shared with Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. And I remember when I found out about that, I have her face burned into my head and saying, this is the reason why. This is the reason why I continue to advocate. And this is why I will rally for patients and the betterment of our profession and the care that we give. So consider this your ability to be able to get out of this cycle of being upset about the situation and having the ability to be a part of something that's doing something about it. That's the message that I'll give to all my colleagues listening in on this.
Thank you, Justin. Thank you. Maggie, how about you? I'll let you share your thoughts on why should those viewing and those not viewing attend the Report for Duty rally in May.
The energy is going to be off the hook. I just know it. Anytime you go to anytime you're with your people, when I've been at a conference, you just can't bottle that up. I promise you. What you leave there with is, you're going to be with the nurse tribe. You're going to be with the nurse first. It's just something that you can't even explain. Again, like Justin said, it gives you purpose, gives you something to look forward to. You can make change. You can be part of change. You have an idea, you have a suggestion. They want to hear about it, right? Then you talk to other people. You're in community. I promise you, being in community it's just.
Thanks, Maggie. And Alice, you're up.
Yes. So showing up to the Nurses SHIFT Change rally matters because visibility creates leverage. When nurses show up together in person in numbers, it sends a very clear message about safety, ethics, dignity, and that this is important to us and this is non-negotiable. So we're showing up and we're going to show out. There is definitely much to be said about nurses and the community that we create, but it's also about patient outcomes, community trust, and the sustainability of our healthcare system. Because I think sometimes when we do things like this, people are like, oh, there go the nurses, as if it's all just for us. But it's not just for us, but for us so we can help others. It's like help me help you type of thing. And so if nurses don't define the future of our profession, as we know, and as history has shown us, others will. And that usually doesn't work out into our favor. So our presence is power. And this rally is really about reclaiming that power.
Amazing, amazing. Thank you so much, all of you. Justin had to drop off, but we appreciate all of the gems that he shared this evening. And just summing up everything that we said, as we close tonight, I want to leave us with this truth, right? This work is on all of us. It's on us nurses to explain to our colleagues what we stand for, right? To stay rooted in our values, even when it feels uncomfortable. And that's a lot of what I'm hearing tonight. We have to start having honest conversations about what we care about as nurses and why it matters. Fear thrives in silence, right? And I'm sure we've all heard by now, when we stay silent, we stay complicit. But confidence and knowledge is how we move forward, right? As Maggie mentioned, whether we clock in, we clock out. When we clock in, nearly everything about our practice is driven by governance, right? As Maggie mentioned, policies, procedures, decisions made far beyond the bedside. And yet many nurses live in fear of speaking up, even ethically, and because of loss of jobs. So we watch others speak out and we comment, but we share, but we have that fear. And some of it is, is understandably so. I think the story of Alex, the ICU nurse who was murdered, right, while trying to protect someone else, it really forces us to ask a question, and it forces us to ask hard questions. Outside of the walls of the hospitals, where are the protection for nurses, right? Where are the resources for nurses? And where's the due process? And ethically, nurses are obligated to protect conditions, to document patterns of harm, as Alice mentioned, and to do the right thing. And what we welcome you and we invite you to share all of these pillars, because everything we talked about tonight, it really stands for our pillars, our humanities, our ethics, our social justice, and science. And we invite you to join us at the Report for Duty rally in May. You can log on to nurseshiftchange.org and get all the information. We have information about hotels. The event will take place on May 7th. We will have a Hill Day. We have a pre-day on May 6th. So there's a lot that's going to be going on. An agenda will be available on our website soon. Make sure that you sign up for our email list. You can go right to our website and you can join the movement or attend the Report for Duty rally. You can sign up, join our email list. You can follow us on YouTube, subscribe to our channel. And we also have an ebook that's available, the Nurses SHIFT Change ebook. Something that we want nurses to make sure that you're doing is calling your senators, calling your lawmakers, calling, using 5 calls, right? Calling up your representatives, because you basically voted them in. We talked about voting tonight. Voting is so important. We've given them a job, and we can actually have say and use our voice in making sure that if they're not doing what we need them to do, maybe they don't need that job, right? So I say that to say, use your collective voice, use your collective power. Report for Duty in May. Visit nurseshiftchange.org, and you will see all of the information that you need in order to join us and sign our petition. We have a petition. I dropped the links in the chat for nurseshiftchange.org, for our ebook, for our petition. We welcome you and we invite you to join to sign our petition so that you can join the movement. And I have to thank everyone, all of you, for joining. Justin, I know you had to go. Thank you for joining. Alice, Maggie, such a wonderful job. Rosa, amazing job as usual, right? So just sharing some of the comments. We have some fabulous comments, just everyone just really encouraging. Michelle is saying, I appreciate everyone here who contributed and inspires. Looking forward to seeing all of you there at the rally. So Michelle said, Nurse Alice, I'm going to follow you. Would love to connect as well. So make sure that you guys can share your, we'll be sure to share your Instagrams, your handles, your social media handles, so that they can find you as well. Are there any last comments before? I know we're a little over, but if there are any last comments anyone would like to share, go for it.
I think advocacy is so important. Amplifying our voices is so important. And the more voices, nurse voices we get out there about the important issues impacting our profession, our education, our state patient safety, and all of those things, the more informed the public can be, and the more informed the public is, hopefully the more informed a more informed way they'll use their vote to get the politicians and legislators in place that can really make the change, and so we can have the impact that we need to improve things for our profession and for our patients, because we all want to be good nurses. We all want to do what's best for our patients, and we're limited because of certain policies and things that are in place. So we really need the right folks in there. And if nurses want to run for office, listen, I encourage, if there's a nurse out there that wants to run for office, let's get behind them, let's prepare them. But we need to be out there leading the conversation.
Tell it.
Yes.
We will make it happen.
Yes, and personal invite. If there's a story, if there is something like an injustice or something you want to shed light to, IamNurseApproved.com is launching any day now. And so if you're interested in a story or feel like there's a story that needs to be told, even if you don't want to tell it or write it, let us know, give us a news tip, and we will get it covered.
Love it, love it. Any final words, Maggie? I know you were in agreement, and I'm there right with you, Alice. When you talk about running for office, I'm right there with you. So,
I'm not running, but I'll help anyone run. And we
all
do
right.
need, there's like nurses with voice. We have other nurses, right? We have Kim. She does. She did her doctorate work around, right, helping nurses to get in office. So we always know who's. There's another nurse. If you want to get elected, we know nurses. We will get you there.
Yep.
You have it. All right, Rosa, any last words?
It is a privilege to know you all, and even more so to call you friends.
There.
And you each know I mean that.
Yes, yes, right back at you. Right back at you. Thank you guys so much for joining. Just hold tight 1 second. And for everyone else watching and listening, thank you so much for joining us. And we will see you next time.